Tycho. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, was there a turning point when you realized LinkedIn could be a powerful growth driver for your business? Because I remember you mentioned something about, you know what, we're not growing anymore, so I'm going to double down into this founder branding thing. How did
Yeah.
you approach it? Like, what was your initial strategy jumping into LinkedIn?
Yeah. So actually, I would like to go back in time a little more even.
Of course.
I had a first business, and that business was a completely different business. It was a business in business gifts. So we created
Okay.
packages with all kinds of local products from the city that I live in, and we would sell these to businesses, and they could give that to their employees or their business relations. And we just founded it, and we didn't have any clients yet. And back then, LinkedIn wasn't more than a platform where you just basically had your online CV, right? There was a timeline, but
Yes.
almost nobody posted. So I posted something about that new business on LinkedIn as a promotion. And that little video that I posted, and this is I think about 6 or 7 years ago,
Okay.
went viral locally, right? So it reached a lot of people, and that's what got us our first clients. And
Wow.
yet at that moment, I didn't think of the fact that I could do that every single week or day, right? It's just some limiting belief that led me that didn't make me capitalize on it more. Anyways,
Yeah.
fast forward a couple years, 2.5 years into my agency, 2.5 years ago. So 5 years ago, we started the agency. First 2.5 years went okay, but a little slow. Sales started slowing down. The marketing that we did wasn't very effective. So at that moment, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do a couple things. First of all, I'm going to focus my service. I'm going to just focus on B2B scale ups. And second of all, I'm going to create content and I'm going to post it as often as possible. So I'm going to create valuable content that shows that I can solve the problems of my prospect, written, video, carousels, whatever, experimenting with different formats and post it as often as possible. Started doing that 2.5 years ago. First year, the ROI was okay. I got some inbound leads, but
Hmm.
I didn't think the business that I got out of it in euros or dollars wasn't weighing up to the amount of time and effort that I
Time.
spent into it.
Exactly.
But after that, it started compounding. And now 2.5 years later, around 60% of our revenue actually that we're doing at this moment can be attributed to everything that we do on LinkedIn. And I have to
Well,
say a big part of that is posting, but I also advertise on LinkedIn. So I basically boost the well-performing post to my small group of ideal customers.
so did you do that through thought leadership ads?
Mostly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did a lot
Okay.
of different things throughout time. We did this before thought leader ads were an option, right? About a year ago, I think they got
Yeah.
introduced. Before that, we simply took the best performing videos of my personal account. We advertised with them on our company account.
Okay. Interesting. And there was something you mentioned earlier that for the first year you thought that the time invested and the revenue generated, they weren't really aligning. So you must have had some doubts, right? Like I've given a year into this because a lot of founders that come to me, they're like, it's been 3 months and we are the leads, where's the revenue? They lose patience. So how did you tackle that? Because I'm sure there was a point where you probably thought that, you know what, maybe the time that I'm investing in this isn't really worth it and I could probably spend that on running the business itself.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That is a very good point, and that is, I think, one of the toughest things
Mm.
in marketing. When do you know what you're doing needs more time, and when do you know what you're doing is failing, so you need to pivot?
Yeah.
And that is not something that I have an easy answer to. The only thing that I can say is that there are a couple things that you need to nail, that you need to absolutely nail, that gave me the confidence that I could keep going and that it eventually would have an ROI. First of all, your ICP. You have to have a very clear idea of who you are marketing towards to. And when you think it's specific enough, then probably you need to become a little bit more specific, niche down. Second of all, you need to nail your messaging. You need to make sure that your messaging stands out, grabs attention, but also makes your prospect clear that they have a problem that you can solve. And these two things basically form the strategy. And after that, It's simply production, right? Creating content that has a high enough quality to stand out, to grab the attention, and to bring the message across. If you do these things well, then basically what you're doing is being visible in your group of ideal customers with content that grabs their attention and shows them that you can solve their problems. If you do that well, and if you do that often enough, it's always going to have an effect. It's not something that is an option for your business, I believe, in 2024. It's something that is an absolute necessity, unless you're a completely sales-driven organization or network-driven organization. But if you're a marketing-driven organization, then this is something you simply have to get to work at some point. I think also for me, I knew that I had to get it to work, and I was very confident about the ICP that we were targeting, the messaging that we decided on, and the content we were pushing out there. Plus, I can say this as well. We got positive response, right? We got leads in, and we got positive response. It's just that the revenue, the actual revenue that we got in that first year, also due to sales cycles and all these things, that first year didn't, that wasn't a clear ROI yet.
Yeah.
Looking at everything that we put in.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And you mentioned how it's important to nail your ICP and the content that you're creating is actually relevant to the people that you want to target.
Yeah.
Many founders, you could call it almost like a fear or uncertainty that, hey, we can't really start because we feel like the content that we're going to create isn't really going to resonate with people. What if it fails? What if you don't get a lot of reactions and impressions, the viral metrics? How did you, as a founder, overcome these initial challenges of putting yourself out there and with time pivoting to make sure that your messaging is actually related to your target audience?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things, right? First of all, your first post is never going to be as good as your 10th post, and your 10th post is never going to be as good as your 100th post. So you simply just have to get the reps in order to become better. I'm actually following this whole process with a bunch of internal thought leaders here at Dapper. We started posting collectively with a group of 10 or 12 of our employees, I think half a year ago. And half a year ago, their post got shit reach, didn't get any likes, no comments. It simply didn't reach anybody, right? Or it was super insignificant. Yeah. But by doing it more often, by doing it at least on a weekly basis, when we talk about my colleagues, we see that the quality goes up. We see that they're improving. We see that they're building their network. And now they're actually, some of them are getting great reach and are posting really high quality stuff. And that wasn't possible. That wasn't possible simply when it was their very first post. So you have to get the reps in. So in order to get to that good post that gets a lot of reach and speaks to the right people, you have to probably simply go through a bunch of posts that aren't as good. So that's one thing. And then second of all, if people worry about a bad post and what that might have as a result on their reputation or whatever you
what
would call
will people say?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And of course, we're all human, so we're all sensitive to this. Yes. I don't like it when my post speaks to absolutely nobody. I don't like it when I don't get likes. It doesn't feel good. But what really helped me, I didn't make this up myself. I read it somewhere. If a post performs badly, nobody sees it. So who cares, right? And if a post does really well, it reaches a bunch of people. And these are the posts that probably everybody sees. So you should really overcome that, but that shame or that anxiety for posting. And what helps me a lot is just setting very clear goals around how often you would want to post, and just stick to that. If you can commit to posting 1 time a week or twice a week or 2 times a week, whatever it is, it's fine. But commit to it, make it realistic, commit to it for a certain amount of time. And as soon as you get into this habit of posting, you start paying less and less attention to these metrics anyways. And whilst you pay less attention to it and posting becomes easier, you'll see the results go up actually.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned something about how even if you're posting once or twice a week, just make sure that you commit to it and you show up every single week. that is the definition of consistency when it comes to creating content on LinkedIn as a founder. A lot of people, they feel so overwhelmed, and it's almost like a crushing pressure, because most creators on LinkedIn, they preach, oh, consistency means 5 times or 7 times a week and you cannot miss a day. That is a lot of pressure, right? So that is an excellent point that you've mentioned. One thing that I want to follow up regarding your answer is, you said that you guys are taking sort of like a thought leadership approach throughout your organization.
Yep.
Do you have a certain framework that you guys are using? Like, how did you guys start it? Did you guys plan for it first and then you implemented it? Like, what was that process like?
Do you mean for posting or for the process of setting up this thought leadership program?
Well, sort of like setting up this thought leadership program within the organization. You said 10 to 12 people are taking part, right?
Yep.
So how did that
Yeah,
come into
yeah, yeah,
place?
yeah, 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 yeah. So what we did is we first asked around, of course, if people wanted to join
Mm-hmm.
this thought leadership program, and we tried to make the threshold as low as possible, asking people to post once a week. And if you post once a week, you can join this program, right? And I think also for founders or whoever that wants to build thought leadership, if you start off with a low commitment but stick to that commitment, that's always better than starting off with a high commitment, because most of the people will fail, right? So just start off with if you want to create a habit, start off with a small commitment that is realistic, and focus on continuity. So we asked people here, do you want to be in the thought leadership group? A lot of people did. The only commitment was one times posting a week. Then what we did together is look at the ICP. The ICP is pretty much the same for everybody here, but for some people, when they have a slightly different discipline, they want to speak to a specific niche within our niche, right? We have a designer that posts, for instance, and that person wants to speak to designers in the industry. We have performance marketers, we have content marketers. So
Yes.
the ICP and the messaging might be slightly off. So we defined the ICP together. We decide the messaging together, and we decided what type of content we wanted to create. For most of them here, it's written content still. For some, they also want to create video content. So that requires different processes, right? Then what we did, basically, I asked everybody to create a very strict process around posting, but I gave people the freedom to organize it the way that they wanted themselves. So for me personally, I have blocks in my agenda around certain key elements of the process around creating a video. So the shoot day is planned in my agenda for the rest of the year on the same day every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Writing posts in the morning, I always have a little block for it on the mornings that I post, things like that. So I asked the group to do that. And then, which I believe is a key to the success of this program, is the meeting that we have every Friday morning at 9 a.m. with this whole group. It's just a meeting of half an hour in which we give feedback on each other's post. So we're in that meeting with 10 or 12 people, and we make a division before the meeting where we give each other a compliment and an improvement for every single post, and one person gives feedback to one person, right? So in that way, everybody gets some feedback and a compliment about their post, which helps everybody improve, and everybody hears the feedback that other people get as well. Plus,
Exactly.
if you come to that meeting but you didn't post, you're an asshole, because then somebody else cannot do their part, right? So it's it's a positive way of social control also.
Encouraging. Yeah.
Yes.
Love that. Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's more like internally creating champions of your point of view and thought leadership or your business in general, but at the same time giving them the freedom to organize it the way they want it. You've mentioned, Tycho, that over 60% of your business can be attributed to LinkedIn, let's say.
Yes.
Is this only for your founder brand, or like throughout the organization of Dapper that attributes to this?
Yeah. For now, most of it due to my founder brand. And I think, well, that might change. I hope that will change. But we've only really started giving attention to other thought leaders in the organization and pushed that since about 6 months ago, right? So as we saw with my personal profile, it takes a while to build an audience.
100%.
It takes a while to build engagement, to build a name in the industry. But I'm seeing the curve, the learning curve of my team being very, very steep, also because they help our clients with it, of course. So I think that very soon we'll be getting business from other sources as well. And I believe that, you know, especially here in the Netherlands and Belgium and Western Europe more and more, you'll see the Dapper colleagues pop up everywhere. So at some point, maybe somebody sees a post of my colleague Paul or my colleague Gina or my colleague Linde and me a bunch of times, and then reach out and then, where can you attribute it to? Not sure, because there were so many different touch points over time. But I believe that this whole ecosystem of thought leaders will drive pipeline in the near future. But up until this point, it has been my personal profile, and I think I could double the business just by posting myself also. So the power of a founder brand, it should not be underestimated. I think that in the Netherlands, at least, I know that economies work different in other countries, and in the States it might be even more. But I think I could easily grow this business. Not easily, but just looking at it from a founder brand perspective, I think it could grow to 10 million in revenue with just posting myself.
Love that. And a lot of times people think having a founder brand is only limited to posting, right? But there's obviously stuff going on in the background. Let's say you're creating content, Tycho. How do you turn having that audience into revenue? Because people engage with you, you get some sort of leads, but do you do anything to create long-term relationships? Because I'm sure that not all leads convert directly, right? Some of them reach out to you and they're like, we read your content, but in reality, they never really interacted with you, but they were still consuming it in the background, right? So how do you approach that? How do you make sure that, yes, I know that not all of them are going to convert right away, but I need to keep creating content, develop relationships so that maybe eventually they'll start working with me?
Yeah. So up until this moment, we've only optimized for inbound leads. So the people that see my content and that eventually want to work together with me or are considering to work together with Dapper, they would send us a message via our website, sometimes via my personal profile on LinkedIn, and they want to talk, right? We have our regular sales process, which is a couple meetings, a bit of research, a proposal, and generally our sales success rate is around 40%, which means that for 4 out of 10 people that approach us eventually become a client of Dapper. So that's relatively high. And I would say, and I don't have the exact data on this, I would say this is even higher in the group of people that enter our pipeline, enter our funnel, become an inbound lead because they see us on LinkedIn, because the other inbound leads are, for instance, Google leads, right? So they're a lot less warmer. When I'm in a meeting with somebody that saw my posts on LinkedIn, they're using the words that I use, right? They're speaking my language. They tell me that they feel like they know me. So these things help me to convert these inbound leads. So
love that.
Basically, a long story short, I really don't have a lot of processes in place to build relationships on an individual level. It's really, people see my content over time. I become famous in that niche, right? That's what we call it here at Dapper.
You become the go-to person. Yeah.
You can become the go-to person. The moment that they need an agency, we're on the top of that shortlist and they reach out to us. And then when they reach out to us, we try to provide them with a proposal that is as solid as possible. And then, we hopefully convert them to a client. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, 100%. It does. I think when people do, let's say you are creating content. I had this very interesting conversation with somebody yesterday as well on my podcast. When people reach out to you, do you ask them, how did you hear about us? Or is there a qualitative way that you measure whether they came through LinkedIn or not? Like, how do you approach, if you were to attribute LinkedIn, right? Obviously, there's no way everything's a touch point, but how do you handle LinkedIn attribution?
Yep. So generally, marketing attribution is, super difficult, of course. But the thing that helps me most to get an idea of what works and what doesn't is simply by asking where a lead comes from, right? So there are two moments in which we measure that. First of all, we have it in our form. We ask, hey, where did you found us? And then in a sales conversation, I also ask where a lead found us, because sometimes the field that they fill out on the web form is incomplete. So, for instance, they would say the internet, right? We found you on the internet, which is, of
Too
course,
vague.
completely useless. But then when I have a meeting with them, I ask them, "Hey, where did you find us?" And preferably even I ask three questions: Where did you see us for the first time? Where or what contact moments can you remember after that? And what is the reason that you eventually reached out? And
Yeah,
that can give them even more complete picture. And then we see
love
that
that.
that a lot of people are very confident in saying that they got to know us via LinkedIn.
Love that. And for people, let's say for founders who are thinking of starting building their founder brand, but they're hesitant, right? Like they want to use it as a strategic tool. What is your advice to them? Like something that you feel is very much overlooked, but is very critical when you're initially starting building your founder brand when it comes to content, let's say.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Well, the people that are hesitant, first of all, about starting, I would ask them the simple question: Do you want to be visible amongst your ideal customers? Do you want your ideal customers to see you and to know you? And the very easy answer to that question is, of course you do. Because if they don't know you, you will never get the chance to sell to them, right? It's
Exactly.
if you are not known by your potential customer, if your customer doesn't know of your existence, they will not buy from you. I once read a quote somewhere which really stuck. It's business is created by reminding people that you exist. If you do not remind people that you exist, they will not consider you as an option, so they cannot buy from you. So that's the one thing that I would say to founders if they hesitate on posting it. And the second thing is, LinkedIn is by far the easiest, most low barrier way to reach your audience, to reach a large group of audience without having to pay for it right now. So that's the second of all. And then third, the most effective way to build trust as a B2B brand in your group of ideal customers is by showing your own face and sharing your own stories. Much more effective than doing marketing from a company account, right? So these
Yeah.
three things should be enough evidence or should be strong enough arguments to start posting. And then, second of all, there are two things I think that founders should take into consideration. And that is, first of all, if you post something about your service or your product, if you post something that you want that should grab attention, then it's very important to try to figure out what is actually of value to your prospect. What does your prospect actually find interesting and interesting enough or funny enough to stop scrolling, right? So generally people are on social media either to laugh or to learn, one of these two things. So that's what your content should do. It should either teach your prospect something, or it should make them, or it should entertain them in some type of way. So what are
Exactly.
you going to create?
Educate or entertain. Yeah.
Well, there we go. That one,
Yeah.
that one sounds as nice
Educate or
as laugh or
entertain.
learn. I like it. Um, so try to figure out what it is that you can post about that actually teaches your prospect something. But on the other hand, what I see that a lot of founders don't capitalize on yet, and what I really like doing is just is built in public. That's what they call it, right? So basically,
Exactly.
sharing the lessons of building a company, even though that isn't the strongest way to get people to understand what your service or product is like, right? It doesn't create problem and solution awareness. It does create authority. It does create positive association. So a nice mix of these two things with founders of young companies, young fast-growing companies, I see is very effective in
Yeah.
creating reach, building trust, and eventually generating leads.
Love that. There's one last thing that I want to ask you, Tycho, before we wrap this up.
Yep.
Most founders, and I think it's universal, and not just founders, but content creators in general, when they're trying to put their point of view or thought leadership out there, they're almost afraid to piss people off. They
Uh-huh.
fear, like, if we say something, people won't like us, and then we don't want that as humans. So how about we water down our thought leadership, our strong point of views, and then
Yeah.
just put something out for the general audience so that we can get more and more positivity, you could say. But do you really think that is the right way to stand out as a thought leader? Like, what is it what do you need to do to become a thought leader?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So as a thought leader, you want to take a very strong stance. The risk of being a thought leader is not that you create enemies, so to speak. The risk is that you sound too much like other people and that you'll just get lost in all the content that is out there, right? There are a lot of people that post on LinkedIn. There's a lot of content out there. There are a lot of advertisers that grab your attention. Why on earth would somebody stop scrolling to look at whatever you have to say? Well, one thing that you can do to increase the chances of somebody scrolling is by making a statement, a strong statement that either people are like, yes, he's right, or she's right, or where they're like, hey, what the hell? That's not right.
Exactly.
So strong statements work. But what I would urge you to do is don't make strong statements just for the sake of making strong statements. Figure out what you really, really, really think is true and what you really stand for, and dare to take a stance there and just spread that message, right? But yeah, to answer your question, taking a stance is less riskier in that sense than not taking a stance. Because if you don't take a stance and if you have this
You sound like everybody else.
right, then you're never gonna
Yeah.
grab anybody's attention.
Love that. I think that was a fantastic way to conclude this episode because a lot of people do fear this, being disliked. But the way you put it, the risk isn't making enemies. The risk is sounding like everybody else, which is something that you just cannot afford if you want to become a thought leader. Thank you so much, Tycho, for this episode and time. I think there's a lot of learnings that people can take away from this on a founder level and on an organizational level as well from what you're doing with your team. Thank you so much for being here and yeah, had a great time.
My pleasure.